Lanny Poffo died this week, and this news came out on Thursday, courtesy of Jim Duggan. He had been in New York. He was set to do a signing in New York, I think today, and he had been living in Cuba the last couple of years. And Lanny Poffo, of course, the younger brother of Randy Poffo, Randy Savage, the son of Angelo Poffo, who was a wrestler, who was a promoter. They, of course, had their own outlaw group, International Championship Wrestling, that Lanny was a part of. And like, Lanny was never a gigantic star, but he was, there during that huge period for WWF, a well-known character. And also, credited as being one of, if not the first, to introduce a moonsault off the top. So
really?
It was, I had always known he was like very early on was someone that did it. But the Observer today noting that like he may have been the first, even like before like a Chavo Sr. So as much as we're celebrating Keiji Muto, remember Lanny Poffo. I remember being at an independent show about 10 years ago up here in Ontario, and Lanny would have been, he was 68 when he passed away this week. So he would have been, I'm guessing, around 58, 59. And all of a sudden, he does a moonsault off the top rope. And I just could not believe that in 2011, this guy was doing moonsaults at the time on independent shows in front of a couple hundred people. And just, the guy hustled in these matches. But, a guy that worked many, many different territories from Detroit, St. Louis, Mid-Atlantic, Grand Prix out in for Emile Dupree. Out on the East Coast, and then goes to Mid-South. And then when it was, ICW was kind of the outlaw group, and they were, this was a very intense promotional war, specifically with Continental, with Memphis. And you had guys that were going on television and just cutting promos on the wrestlers on Memphis. And, it was to the point that like some of these guys were like carrying guns on them if they had run-ins with the other territories wrestlers. And like anything in pro wrestling, they eventually made an angle out of it and brought Randy in to feud with Jerry Lawler. And then Lanny followed suit. And then after Randy left Memphis, he went to the WWF after he got on their radar, and Lanny would go to WWF. Like, he would follow Randy like quite a bit, but he did have a distinguished career himself pre-WWF. And he goes to WWF in mid-85, and this is where he was just leaping Lanny Poffo, where he was the babyface character that would write poems on Frisbees and send them out into the crowd. And it's not until 89 that he turns heel as the Genius. And probably his most famed match was working against Hulk Hogan on a November 1989 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, where, due to the help of Mr. Perfect, it goes down in the record books that the Genius defeated Hulk Hogan by countout on NBC. On network television, millions of people seeing Lanny Poffo prevail. And then Mr. Perfect and the Genius taking a sledgehammer and destroying the WWF Championship belt. And that would pretty much be your setup for Hogan and Perfect to go to all the different cities and feud in the early portion of 1990. But Lanny Poffo always would bring up this match that he was so grateful for Hulk Hogan. He had no illusions that he was Hogan's equal or anything like that. And he would never say anything bad about Hulk Hogan. And think about, him and Randy had a lot of bad blood at times. They had ups and downs in their relationships, but that was one person that Lanny would never discredit. And also brought up the fact that around this time period, like, he did experiment with steroids. And that was something he was very adamantly against later in life, acknowledging that he did try them, and no one, no kids, no athletes should be, he was very, very anti-drugs, but did acknowledge like his own usage. And then after the Perfect Hogan Genius kind of program, it was pretty much as a manager that he served. We had just reviewed recently him with the Beverly Brothers, and then wraps up around the end of 1992. And the rest of his career, it's nowhere near the spotlight of his time in WWF. He would end up signing with WCW in 1995 and maybe wrestled one or two matches during his like 3-4 years with the company. And it was a weird deal where he was signed and Randy had bought the rights to the Gorgeous George like character. So it was, he had given Lanny the indication, like, you will be repackaged as Gorgeous George, so dye your hair and just be ready for that call. The call never came. So this guy was making six figures for years doing nothing with WCW. Eric Bischoff's story is that he signed Lanny as a favor to Randy, and it was Randy who took a pay cut to pay for Lanny. That's at least Eric Bischoff's side. But yeah, Lanny just, he made a lot of money for WCW and did very, very little for them until they finally ended the deal around 99. And you fast forward to 2015, and that's when Randy Savage, after his death, is inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And even that was a controversial issue because before he had died, Randy did not want to go into the Hall of Fame unless his father and brother were inducted with him, citing the Von Erichs all getting into the Hall of Fame. And it was either my whole family or none of us. And WWE was not going to put in Angelo or Lanny. And Lanny was the one who accepted. And he went and accepted the award on behalf of his brother. And then the rest of his career, it was kind of limited to, he did appear at All In that we were just mentioning. He was in Jay Lethal's corner with the Black Machismo connection. And then, of course, later that year, did commentary for New Japan, which it was an attempt to do commentary, but was not asked back after it was not quite a fit of Lanny Poffo calling New Japan Pro Wrestling, but probably a character that many, many people all know, the genius character that they will remember, and a very interesting man to speak with. I mean, he was always an interesting interview anytime I got to speak with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, several times actually. On the convention circuit, I remember having brief interactions with him, and was always very willing to talk, and was always very excited to speak to an audience. So I was sad to hear this news, and our condolences.